Welcome back to a new episode of Vienna Showcase. Welcome back to a new episode of Vienna Showcase. This edition takes you to the Albertina Modern, Vienna's newest museum of modern and contemporary art, which opened in 2020. Located in the historic Künstlerhaus on Karlsplatz, it stands in the heart of our cultural metropolis and within walking distance of the globally renowned Musikverein and an array of other famed museums and cultural institutions. Art and culture are the founding pillars of Vienna and are integral to the city's tourism offering. The Albertina Modern is now another highlight on Vienna's unrivaled cultural map. We hope you enjoy this insight into the new Albertina Modern.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this new and exciting edition of Vienna Showcase, here from the Albertina Modern. My name is Adia, and it feels so good to be back in touch with everyone out there again. We at the Vienna Tourist Board decided if you all aren't able to come to Vienna and experience everything that's happening, circumstances being as they are, we are going to have to take the city to you. So here we are with the third episode of our series, Vienna Showcase, taking place live today from Vienna's newest museum for modern and contemporary art. To my side, I'm standing with Klaus Albrecht Schröder, the General Director of the Albertina, and he's going to take over the show and begin in a few minutes. But first, I'd like to go over a little bit of housekeeping with you. After the tour, we want to be able to hear all of your comments and thoughts, anything that you might have, and so we're going to take a few minutes to do just that. There's two ways that you can get questions to us. Either you can post your questions directly into the chat, just make sure that you're logged into YouTube before you do that, or you can send your questions via email to showcase@vienna.info. I'd also, very important, like to reassure everybody that all of today's participants, including the crew, have been recently COVID tested, which is why we can appear here this close together today. So I just want to let you know that, as always, we're staying safe here, and we hope that you're all staying safe out there as well. And for everybody out there around the globe joining us, I wish you a very inspiring 30 minutes. Now on to you, Dr. Schröder.
Thank you so much, Adia. I welcome you at the Albertina Modern, Albertina's last satellite and Vienna's new Museum of Modern and Contemporary Art. Our art collection for contemporary and modern art consists of more than 65,000 works, from Nam June Paik, the Korean artist, to Arnulf Rainer, the Austrian artist, from Indian art to Chinese art. We have selected 200 works for this exhibition, which shows masterpieces from our international collection, and I have selected 10 works, and I would like to accompany you through the exhibition now. And I'll start with these two giant figures. The artist is a Romanian sculptor named Vergilius Moldovan, and he does not shy away of ugliness. You see the discolored skin, you see the signs of age. These two giants represent two popes. Easy to recognize, Pope Benedict XVI, and he is carrying Pope John Paul II. As it is said in the Bible, one carries the burden of the other. And it is a burden, of course, no question about that, because of the highly popular predecessor, John Paul II, who played a pivotal role in the collapse of the Eastern Bloc, and he had to deal with a lot of problems in the Catholic Church, internal as well as external problems. His successor had to deal with that. So he is carrying him in a hyper-realistic way, bigger than life, nearly nude, naked, with the exception of two white pants and two knotted handkerchiefs. It must be a burden to become Pope, but even being a Pope is a very human challenge, and they will deal with that. The contrast couldn't be bigger than between a Romanian sculptor and a Chinese painting. And I would like to draw your attention from this realistic work of art to a painting that is a combination of pop art, hard-edge painting by Fang Lijun. Fang Lijun is one of the most famous representatives of the new generation of the 90s in China, which follows the 85 New Wave movement in China. still critical, but also ironically, dealing with subjects that are not easy to read. The bald man, young man, is obviously a self-portrait. He's embraced by a woman, although it's not easy to understand the difference between these two genders. This androgynous young man doesn't answer to the embracement, to the love. Is it a passion? Is it a summer of love in China in the early 21st century? You have this blue, cloudy sky, some flowers, roses against this blue sky, a huge peony blown up to a balloon is behind that. It's nearly threatening, and I wonder myself if this is really the paradise of love. He doesn't answer, his hands are hanging next to his body behind his back. So what's happening between these two? Will they find together? Will they answer to each other? I think most of the artworks we present to you have questions. They are questions. And we, as the viewers, we have to look for answers. And the answers are different. They can be very different. We will see that with the next work of art. This is a strange thing. This installation ranks among the most popular works of our modern and contemporary art collection. It is by the Danish artist Peter Lenz, a self-portrait, obviously in life size. Dressed in his pajama and a nightcap, he's sitting in his bed, eyes wide open, and he's thinking. Thinking of what? His hands, his arms and legs are enormously absurd long, thus resting on the floor, as if someone had pulled on them, or as if they are not part of the body, as if they try and attempt to flee the bed. Obviously, this man is not in control of his body. You might say of his mind, figuratively speaking, of his life. He has lost control. And he's imprisoned in a white cell, surrounded by a number of doors. All of them are definitely too small to serve as an exit. So he is imprisoned. He's imprisoned, and that looks in a kind of funny. It reminds me of the famous cartoons by Winston McCay in the early 20th century. He made cartoons of Little Nemo, of Slumberland. Whenever this boy awakes out of his adventurous dreams, in the moment he falls out of the bed, he realizes reality is something very different to the dream. And that is also something true with the cell, with the interior, with the room, which is reminiscent of Alice's adventure in Wonderland. So this man is imprisoned, can't escape, can't control his life, his body, and that is funny, but at the very same time maybe terrifying or oppressive. I admire this work because it reminds me that also we sometimes are not in control of our life, whatever we think. From the Danish artist Peter Lenz to one of the most famous artists in our time, Georg Baselitz. The Danish artist was thinking about the loss of control, what it means for us. Georg Baselitz became famous not only for turning his motifs upside down, what he did since 1969, and this is the last painting he made before that, a revolutionary moment in his life and in art history. He liberated representation from content. He's showing us a crouching dog, and dissects that. So it's not easy to read the whole motif, to stay, not becoming abstract, to stay with the motif, at dark, nearly monochrome in the appearance of the color. He tries to focus on the painting itself. And that's only possible when you don't think of the motif. When you do something with the motif that alienates the motif from its use, from its meaning, from its content. By dissecting the motif, he did the same what he did a couple of months later by turning around the motif upside down. He shows an Hadendower, which belongs to the tribe in Sudan, in Africa, and turns him upside down. So there is still a motif, but you don't focus on the content, not on the motif itself, but on the paint itself. And that means that the two extremes, abstraction and representation, don't have to be two possibilities. They can be seen at the very same time without being disturbed by the history, by the narrative, by the story that is told, and you can still concentrate and contemplate the art itself. There's another artist who focuses only on content, or mainly. He's named Neo Rauch, and he's the main representative of the so-called Leipzig school. I would like to show you one of his masterpieces. He excels in huge, large paintings, which became popular and common since the New York School of Abstract Expressionism. And he tells us a story. Although he tells us a story, it's not easy to understand the story. There's a surreal situation, an atmosphere that cannot be understood. It's mysterious because there are different stages. On the one stage you see maybe a school with inscriptions, Revo, that's the title of the painting, Revolution. The revolution is over. And on the right side, this painter who grew up in the German Democratic Republic in Eastern Germany before the fall of the Berlin Wall, we have the revolution, which doesn't make sense. There is a kind of production line. It's just a wooden bench with things, strange motifs, plants, a recorder, a tire, a bomb maybe. It doesn't make sense at all. It leads to nothing. This is useless. The revolution is over. We have to change our life. Maybe we have to change the world. Maybe we have to look for another system because this one came to an end. And the youth knows that. Even in the T-shirts, they know that the revolution is done. A couple of years later, in 1989, the German Democratic Republic collapsed and a completely new world started. But Neo Rauch stayed true to his style, combining pop, comic strips, and socialist realism to a completely new world of mysterious and secrets. He deals with figurative painting. He is the representative of figurative painting in Germany. But there are other ways to deal with reality. And I would like to go to Great Britain, to one of the best painters in London, Cecily Brown. At first glance, this seems to be an abstract painting. Obviously in a very vivid yellowish hue, derives from a motif that we can recognize easily, lemons. Yellow lemons that give their shine to the whole painting. But there's more in it. It's not only an abstract painting. Cecily Brown, who moved to New York and became a famous artist in the New York art scene, shows us more than that. There is another plate with stripes on it. Disgusting in a way, but they are small birds. So when you contemplate and focus on some motifs, you realize that the abstraction is representation at the very same time. towards the top, it dissolves to an abstract painting. Even there are some even pornographic motives hidden in the different layers that she shows. And I think this is a special problem of contemporary art today, especially of contemporary painting today, to deal with these two extremes, representation and abstraction, and how you look at the one or at the other side. Sculpture is, in comparison to painting, much clearer. And usually it's not abstract. It's usually a figurative thing. And I would like to show you a wonderful softwood sculpture by a German sculptor. Six men standing on 6 segments of a tree trunk. It's a Lebanon cedar. These men are standing in similar postures of different sizes, evidently not life-size. The sculptor is famous for making sculptures bigger than life or much smaller. But Stephan Balkenhol, that's his name, is interested in the comparison to reality. 5 of these figures show us their back, and they don't react to each other. They gaze into a void. Only one man, the smallest one, in this black pant with the white shirt, looks outwards. He communicates with us as he would be the spokesman of the whole group. Stephan Balkenhol shows us the tree trunk with his knots, with the cracks. He shows us how he works, how he carves out of the segment of this Lebanon cedar. And he paints very roughly the black pants, the white shirts, the faces, and the serenity. And their gaze and their mood is very calm, in a way convincing. Maybe we should change our life and build a group, have a spokesman, talk to each other, and live in our own thoughts. This calm and serene sculpture is very different to what the United States of America did at the very same time. And I would like to accompany you to one of the most famous American artists of our time, to Alex Katz. Our collection is very diverse in terms of artists, from Andy Warhol, Robert Rauschenberg, to Georg Baselitz, Anselm Kiefer, Gerhard Richter, from Austrian artists like Wally Export and Maria Lasnik, to French artists like Pierre Soulages or Spanish artist Tapies. And we are very famous for a special focus on American arts. Tom Wesselmann, Roy Lichtenstein, and many others. Jim Dine, Philippe Taff, and one of my best friends, and I admired him more than anyone else in America at the moment, is Alex Katz. Now nearly 92 years old, he shows us a beach stop. It's in his main location, Lincolnville. Alex Katz became famous in the 50s and 60s by combining hard edge painting, which makes a precise contour, and pop art. He's focusing on the beauty of the New York society. He usually depicts his friends of fashion and the art world. Here he shows the middle class resting in front of the majestic, sublime ocean panorama in Lincolnville in Maine. But the people don't mind, they don't look at the scenery. They are nearly blind with their sunglasses, they don't care what they see. And they sit on these unshapely white plastic armchairs and benches. It was the aim, it was the goal of Alex Katz to get the same quickly perceive what you get when you look at large paintings by Jackson Pollock, by Mark Rothko, by Barnett Newman, although it's figurative, but he reduces the reality, the details, till they became nearly abstract. And in a very short moment, you can realize the whole energy of the painting. And that's what he would like to show to us, the energy of life, by bringing together these contradictions, pop and hard edge. I would like to show you how different a European thinks of our time. It's not the beauty of society. It's not the middle class. It's the world that is overshadowed by crisis of the refugees. And the painter is Daniel Richter. Maybe one of the most promising figures in our time in Germany. And although he started his career as an abstract painter, he moved in the late 20th century to figurative painting, because he thought we have to consider that the world must be told and shown what's really happening outside, at the beach stop, with people, men standing around in a circle, with refugees. Here you have your painting, a group of people, obviously refugees, are clinging on a sinking boat in a very nocturnal atmosphere. Will they survive? There's a skull in the horizon of the Black Sea, a very pessimistic perspective for all of them. These neon colors, the infrared of a surveillance camera, and the situation of refugees who are in danger of drowning. And still both painters belong to the best we can imagine in our time. But both deal with representatives, with the object, with the motive, with reality. And there's another painter, again a British one, Sarah Morris, who would like to tell us the same story in monumental, abstract, geometric patterns. Let's go to Sarah Morris and pass by another artist who shows us the myths of history. It's Jonathan Mese, the myth of the foundation of Rome, the capital of the Roman Empire, Romulus and Remus. Below this monster, the monster is Vienna, as we can see here. And we pass by this bronze sculpture and go to a colorful pattern, a lighted geometric painting. But the title is threatening. Munich, 1972. And the rings is part of the ring series of Sarah Morris, is reminiscent of the Olympic Games. And the Olympic Games in 1972 in Munich were overshadowed by the terrorist attack against the Israel sportsmen. More than 50 people died. And she shows us with these black interwoven rings in the high gloss finish of the painting that can be infinite, endless, that patterns represent the infrastructure of urban milieus, of urban society, of Olympic Games, of our life, and reminds us that behind these meaningless symbols of rings, there might be a tragedy. I can imagine that it is very hard to present a whole exhibition with 10 paintings, an exhibition that consists of more than 200 works. So you may have a couple of questions, and I would like to invite you to ask your questions and to stay with us for the next 10 minutes. Thank you so far.
Hello. First, I have to thank you, Director Schröder, for your personal and insightful tour of the museum. It was very special. And now, as we promised, we would like to open up the virtual floor, so you say, to our viewers out there who submitted questions and comments. We're going to start with the first question is from Gary, and their question is, are these 10 works on permanent display that you've shown?
Not exactly these 10 works, but in a very lucky position. For instance, we have more than 30 paintings by Alex Katz and about 200 works on paper. So Alex Katz is always on display, but we can change his masterworks. And the same is true with Daniel Richter or with Stephan Balkenhol. We have more than 54 paintings by Georg Baselitz. And Georg Baselitz is one of our backbones in our collection out of 65,000 works. So you will encounter Georg Baselitz, you will see Alex Katz or the Austrian artists, but not necessarily the same works.
Yeah, so it keeps it interesting always.
I think so.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for that.
So we represent the canon of art history with different works.
Mm-hmm. Keep refreshing, it's perfect. Our next question is from Family Travel Forum. And the question is, can museum goers get as close to Danish sculpture Man in Bed as you do, Mr. Schröder? Can everybody else kind of get there?
You shouldn't get up and step into the installation, but you are very close. To make no mistake, you can stay there as close as we are and you see everything. You see exactly the face of the artist. And we think that, on the one hand, you are safe from a hygienic point of view. On the other hand, we protect our art as it would be Fort Knox. But, and that is most important, you can go as close as you want.
No, definitely. There's a freedom to the space here, actually.
Yeah.
And we have another question right now from Chip from California. Good question. What material is the Pope sculpture made from?
It's silicon.
Oh.
It's silicon. It consists of I don't know exactly what's inside, but outside what you can see, these discolorations in the skin or the signs of age, it's silicon. Okay. And one of these figures takes up to 6 months to be done. So the whole sculpture took the artist a whole year to be done.
Thank you. Okay, so we have another question, which is, are there any exhibitions planned that actually span both of the houses together, so the Albertina and the Albertina Modern?
No. The Albertina will still present old masters from Dürer and Michelangelo, Raphael, to Georg Baselitz and Alex Katz. Contemporary art is also part of the Albertina. But the Albertina Modern will only show art after 1945. And there are monographic exhibitions next year, for instance, Ai Weiwei or Basquiat in 2 years from now. This autumn, the 80s, which became so famous because the new postmodern art started in the 80s, the art of mixture, bringing together different levels of art. So we focus only on this location for one exhibition and both do not communicate.
Okay.
Then they are only 5 minutes walking distance.
Another question, you kind of actually just answered some of this, which was interesting, but what's coming up at the Albertina Modern during the next year? You said Basquiat's coming up soon, right, as well?
So we start here in this year with the 80s. Okay. An exhibition that brings together Basquiat, Jeff Koons, Robert Longo, Cindy Sherman, and other artists who became famous in the 80s, like Julian Schnabel or Francesco Clemente. And after that, we have the first retrospective of Ai Weiwei, which will be a kind of blueprint of a future Ai Weiwei museum in the United States. Then we will show Art Brut, which became famous after Dubuffet founded the name for this series. We will show American art, the broken flag, dealing with American art from the 60s to the 80s. And in all these exhibitions, you will also encounter Austrian art. Because I think it's necessary, and we are well advised, presenting Austrian art to our guests from all over the world, from Moscow to Los Angeles, from Rome to Paris.
And it's also really nice to see all the connections, all of these artists come together, regardless of where they're from, into this really breathtaking space.
But usually we have a theme or a thesis. And in this case, this is the only exception, I wanted to give an insight in our recent acquisition of the ESSL collection, which consists of 7,000 works as a gift given to the Albertina last year. And I wanted to show some of the masterpieces that are in this collection. But from then on, we have either a monographic exhibition like Ai Weiwei or a theme exhibition.
Okay. That makes sense. Let's see. Another question we have is, how is the Albertina Modern different from the other museums in the city of contemporary or modern art, such as the Belvedere 21 and the MUMAC?
Well, that's very easy to answer because we really think of our heritage. The Albertina was founded on 4th of July 1776 in the Age of Enlightenment, American Independence Day, and we are still obliged to fulfill the expectations of our founder, to teach the people, to educate the people. So when you want to see the canon of art history in the 16th century, in the Renaissance, or in Baroque era, or in our time, you have to go to the Albertina. We are not the kind of experimental gallery like the 21 Belvedere. So here you see what really is lasting and is standing in front of our world.
That's actually interesting. And another question we have from Armando is, what is the process in selecting the art or the artist that you're going to put on display, that you're going to really show here for the new visitors that come?
It's one of the most hurtful processes you can imagine, because whenever you say, I would like to choose this work by Peter Halley, by Sarah Morris, we have another 10 we can't show at the same time. Yeah. So when you have 65,000 works, you're in a position like the Museum of Modern Art in New York or like the Centre Pompidou in Paris. You have to choose. And the selection is a hurtful, very painful process. But on the other hand, it's a chance. And it's a possibility to change 3 times a year, the whole installation. So whenever you come to Vienna, you see something brand new. We do the same, and we follow the philosophy of the MoMA in New York to change every 4 months the whole installation, although you will encounter sometimes the same artists, because they are part of our canon.
Yeah. But still, like you said before, even though if you come and you see the same artist, there's always a fresh and different perspective.
Definitely.
Now there seems to be a lot that's coming up here. It's really exciting. Exactly. I think we have time for a couple of more questions. Let's see. Will we see, this is coming from Anna, will we see these artworks after the 14th of March in a different form?
As I said, yes and no.
Yeah.
Same artists, other works, and new artists. Because the next exhibition will deal more with Austrian art, so less international artists as this time, but still there will be, for instance, 15 paintings by Georg Baselitz. Now I have shown 3. So it's, when you go every 3 to 4 months to the Albertina Modern, I would say after 3 years, you have a great understanding of our time, of contemporary and modern art.
Okay. And we have time for one more question, which is it safe, and this is an important question, but is it safe to visit a museum during the pandemic?
It is. Believe me, it is. First of all, we really take care of our visitors. We make sure that the distance between them is 2 meters. We make sure everyone is wearing a medicine mask. And of course, all our hygienic measures are the best you can imagine. But on top of that, the air exchange is so intense that every 5 to 7 minutes, the whole air in a gallery is renewed. So you can, if there is any place that is safe in concerning the corona pandemic, I would say it's a museum, especially a new one as the Albertina Modern.
Thank you so very much. Thank you
very
so much for this tour. And I would like to hear more from you after this because I have so many questions. But that's all the time that we have today. So thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you again. I really hope you all enjoyed this as much as I did. Please join us for our next edition of Vienna Showcase, which will air in May 2021. The location is still to be announced, so make sure you stay tuned and figure out what that is. Until then, stay safe. Stay healthy. Thank you again for watching, and I'm sending you, as always, love from Vienna.
Thank you so much.
Ciao.
by...
Should we go look at this one?
Yes, let's go there.